Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about the reign of England by the sons of William the Conqueror after his death in 1087. William the Conqueror had three sons, Robert Curthose, William Rufus, and Henry. The eldest of the three, Robert Curthose, inherited Normandy from his father. He was a lazy guy who led the life of a squanderer. It was his short, bandy legs that earned him the title of Curthose. William's second son, William Rufus, inherited England from his father, William the Conqueror. He was ambitious and cruel and was successful in putting down the rebellion of the Norman nobles who rose in revolt against him. The knights of England also hated William, but they remained true to the oath of Salisbury that William the Conqueror had made them swear. Both Robert and William envied each other and their respective lands. During his reign, during the reign of William Rufus, Archbishop Lanfranc passed away in 1087, and William Rufus was not very keen on getting the Pope to appoint a new archbishop. He eyed on the vast revenue of Canterbury and hoped to have it all for him with no one at the helm of Canterbury. However, a sudden illness frightened him, and Anselm, the Bishop of Bec was appointed as the Bishop of Canterbury. Anselm could not tolerate the riotous life led by William Rufus after his recovery from the illness. Anselm reproved the king for his behavior, and this was the beginning of the conflict between the church and the state. In fear of his life, Archbishop left England for Rome. In 1100, William Rufus met with a hunting accident and died. Henry, the third son of William the Conqueror, inherited no land from his father but a good sum of money. Henry was a man of good business acumen and obtained a large portion of Normandy from his elder brother Robert in exchange for money. He ascended the throne of England as Henry I after the death of his brother William Rufus in 1100. King Henry I was on the throne of England from 1100 to 1135 AD. You can see a picture of Henry here. Henry I was a capable king, a diplomatic genius, an able administrator, and a successful statesman. During his long tenure of 35 years, there was peace in the land and justice was meted out fairly. The very first act of Henry was to issue a charter in which he promised to keep peace in the land and redress the grievances of the people. This charter of 1100 can be said to be the basis of the Great Charter of Liberties, the Magna Carta. Another diplomatic step by Henry was his marriage to Matilda, the daughter of Malcolm III, who was the King of Scotland. The marriage of Henry and Matilda saw the union of the Norman and the Saxon blood. This made it easier for the English, the Saxons, and the Normans to accept Henry as their undisputed king. Henry was a very capable ruler, and the only rebellion that took place during the first years of Henry's reign was the attack of England by his brother Robert of Normandy. Robert was supported by the rebellious Norman barons led by Robert of Bellamy. However, the people of England firmly supported their king and turned out in large numbers for the battle, and the attackers had to retreat. Henry attacked and destroyed the castle of Robert of Bellamy. He was exiled from England and he went back to his native place of Normandy. In 1106, Henry attacked Normandy, and in the battle that followed, Robert was killed, and Henry became the undisputed king of Normandy and England. Thus, 40 years later, the tables were turned upon Normandy, that is, William the Conqueror conquered England in 1066, and 40 years later, in 1106, Henry I, an England king, conquered Normandy. Henry was an able administrator. He recalled Archbishop Anselm, who flew to Rome in exile during the tenure of the earlier king. Henry recalled Archbishop Anselm from exile, but they were not in very good terms. This was because Bishop Anselm believed the idea of the Pope that even the lowest member of the clergy had a position higher than that of the highest layman because the church was a divine society. That is, any clergy member is superior to all other laymen. Therefore, the king had nothing to do with the appointment of the bishops, which should be the sole prerogative of the pope. This privilege to appoint the bishop was not something that the king would easily give up. So, King Henry put forward the argument that the bishops holding vast tracts of land were feudal barons and should pay homage to the king. Archbishop Anselm was not ready to yield to this point, and he had once again to, to go into exile. In 1106, a compromise was reached between the state and the church, according to which the bishops were to be elected by the cathedral clergy and invested with the symbols of office by the pope, but for the lands they owned, they should pay homage to the king. Henry had a very tidy mind and he wanted a system for everything. He had the chief council called the Magnum Concilium or the Great Council, which was the forerunner of the modern House of Lords in the Parliament. The Magna Concilium consisted of the great lords of the land, both secular and spiritual. This council was summoned whenever the king's court met, and this was wherever the king was present. There was also a smaller council with the great men of king's household. There was a prime minister, a treasurer, the chamberlain, and the marshal, and all their roles were very clearly defined. Another notable reform during the reign of Henry I was the system of itinerant judges who traveled from place to place. They addressed the grievances of the people. These judges were assisted in the matter of administering justice by a group of respectable citizens who belonged to the place. This was the beginning of trial by jury. Henry also selected and trained officers to govern the country as the deputies of the king. In a way, this can be seen as the precursors of the civil service of modern times. General peace and a strong government made England a favorite center of trade and commerce. The city of London turned out to be the meeting place of traders from all over the world. The citizens became so rich that they could buy several privileges from the king. The Charter of London was granted to them by the King Henry I, which gave the people of London so many privileges. We will look at the Charter of London in detail. Before that, we can take a look at the family tree from William I or William the Conqueror to Henry II. As we mentioned before, we can see the three sons of William I here, that is Robert Curthus, who was the Duke of Normandy, William II, who inherited the throne of England from William the Conqueror, who is also known as William the Rufus, and the throne of England uh, was given to his third son Henry. the first after William II. William the Conqueror also had a daughter named Adela. She is important to us as it is her son Stephen who was on the throne of England after the death of Henry I. Henry I had a son and a daughter, and the greatest tragedy of Henry's life was the death of his only son at sea. His daughter, Matilda, was married to Geoffrey, the Count of Anjou. Henry wanted his kingdom to be passed to his daughter and made his nobles swear the oath of fealty to his daughter Matilda. After Henry's death in 1135, the Norman nobles did nothing to crown Matilda as the Queen of England, but they chose to crown Henry's nephew Stephen as the King of England. The son of Matilda followed Stephen on the throne of England as Henry II. Now we look at the Charter of London and the privileges that it granted to the citizens of London. It granted the permission to collect the revenues of Middlesex in exchange for a sum of £300 paid to the king. The citizens of London were also excluded from paying Danegeld. They were given the privilege of choosing their own sheriff and justiciar. Sheriff is the equivalent to our modern police, and justiciar is equivalent to our modern judge. So they were given the privilege to choose both. Thus, with the Charter of London, the beginning of self government can be seen in the city of London. Thus, the reign of Henry I was a happy and prosperous period for London. However, his daughter was not crowned as the successor, and as she was the Countess of Anjou, and Anjou had for long been a thorn in the flesh of England. So they decided to crown Stephen as the King of England. We will continue to look at the reign of Stephen in the next session. Thank you and bye.